Welcome to Inclusive Scheduling and Service Delivery for Students with Disabilities. My name is Bonnie Dupuis, and I'm the FIN Facilitator for Fiddler's Fin Sunrise. Dr. Poinsettia Tillman is the Senior Manager for our department. Today, we'll be discussing inclusive scheduling and service delivery for students with disabilities. By the end of this webinar, you should be able to know the steps of the scheduling process, least restrictive environment, and service delivery models. Understand the complexities of ensuring how student needs are scheduled for services and supports. And inclusive scheduling identifies additional needs that may be met through Fiddlers. We hope that you will be able to identify next steps for schools aligned to your deliverables and work with your local Fiddlers Fin to support inclusive scheduling. What is LRE? Least restrictive environment. The placement in which an individual with students with disabilities can be taught and make progress in the general education curriculum to the maximum extent possible with students without disabilities. LRE refers to time that students with disabilities spend with their non-disabled peers. In Florida, under Section 1003.57 in Florida statutes, inclusion is defined as a student with a disability receiving education in a general education regular class setting reflecting natural proportions and age-appropriate heterogeneous groups in core academic and elective or special areas within the school community. A student with a disability is a valued member of the classroom and school community. The teachers and administrators support universal education and have knowledge and support available to enable them to effectively teach all children. And access is provided to technical assistance and best practices, instructional methods, and supports tailored to the student's needs based on current research. Please take a moment to reflect on why some of these words are bolded. Some key points to keep in mind when implementing inclusive scheduling. There is no perfect script. You won't always have all the answers. Scheduling is a process unique to every school, and it takes a lot of support and is not a one-time event. There is a learning curve for teams as they engage in this process. It takes time. You can't learn from reading about it. It has to be hands-on. And it really is rocket science, since there are many complex variables that come into play. So the big picture is student data drives service delivery, which impacts student achievement, which ultimately leads to increased graduation rates. We always want to start with step 0. This is the cue card for best practices for inclusive scheduling created by the Florida Inclusive Network. Our vision for inclusive best practices is to know your school's LRE data, analyze needs of students in the least restrictive environment, review students' IEPs and identify services, and time in general education must align to specified services on the individual educational plan. So let's review the steps to the scheduling process. Step 1 is to gather a scheduling team. Scheduling using a student-centered approach can benefit all students, not just students with disabilities. Schools need to have prerequisite information and understanding about the models of support, for example, support facilitation and co-teaching, in order to proceed with the scheduling process. The scheduling team is very important. Ensure that an administrator is present. They can come in and out throughout the day, but it is critical that they support the team. Take a moment to read the slide. Why schedule for inclusion? It's not just dump and hope. Rather, support, and succeed. Step 2 is gather and write student data. You record data using chosen formats such as post-it notes, index cards, etc. And you will ask yourself who will be assessing the needs of students with disabilities. It should be the educational IEP educational team members. Many teachers will know their students very well and spend a lot of time progress monitoring. So you create a sticky note for each goal area. This is an example. Then you determine the service delivery model that is least restrictive to meet the needs of students. Use the least to the most restrictive. Consultation being the least, then in-class support, which is comprised of support facilitation and co-teaching, separate classrooms, separate schools. Consultation occurs between 2 or more teachers, documentation is required, and there's no direct services to students with disabilities. Support facilitation and co-teaching is where the ESE teacher and general education teacher work together with ongoing collaboration, shared roles and responsibilities, and common goals. Support facilitation is less intense. The scheduling is flexible. It's set daily or weekly. Both teachers plan and deliver instruction and assessment. Co-teaching is a more intense support, scheduled for the entire period, daily or full block when the class meets. Both teachers plan and deliver instruction and assessment. Step 3, chart sticky notes by content area and level of support. Students are placed on a chart according to their grade level, subject area, and level of support needed. The team discusses student data and support needs based on the individual educational plan and the grade levels or intensity of support. Remember, indirect support is consultation, which is least restrictive, in-class support, which is support facilitation, co-teaching, and then separate setting, which is resource room, self-contained. Chart sticky notes by content area and level of support. This is important to remember that separate class settings for students with disabilities can only be taught by a dual certified teacher or 2 teachers certified, one content area certified and the other ESE certified. This is an example of student post-its according to content area. Step 4, regroup student sticky notes. Types of support needed that may be delivered to students in inclusive environments, such as behavior support plans, instructional accommodations and/or modifications, communication supports, assistive technology, or physical supports. Regroup according to the intensity of the support needed in general education. And then you create sections of classes needed. Step 5, identify staff. When you are making decisions about the level of support for students with disabilities in specific classes, consider other students in those classes that can also benefit from additional support. In doing so, schools realize that they can use their people and time and resources to provide effective educational models that can help all learners. The models of support are not only for the benefit of students with disabilities. Step 6, reanalyze and regroup. Inclusive scheduling can ensure that staff are provided services in the most efficient way. For example, a classroom with 1 general education teacher, one ESE paraprofessional, and a reading specialist all conducting small group lessons may be an inappropriate use of adult supports in the class. Some questions to consider. What are the roles of your school's specialists? Can their roles be expanded to include students with disabilities? Why or why not? Step 7. Create a schedule for in-class supports. Team scheduling is a process that requires all team members to apply what they know about their students, their school staff, and the models of support. Team members use this time to discuss, analyze, and make decisions about aligning student needs with the personnel and services available at their school. This is an example of a middle school teacher's schedule. This is another example of varied ESE teachers at a school. We know that flexible scheduling can benefit all students. We know that teachers can help all students learn through collaborative planning, as well as instructional and behavioral supports. Remember, your student needs will vary from year to year based upon the student population you have and changing student needs. It is important to also identify those students from varying racial and ethnic backgrounds so as to adjust for diversity in each classroom. Using a student-centered approach to scheduling can meet the needs of all students on a campus. Every school is unique. You can't address the scheduling problems of each school unless team members are willing to be flexible and creative. So, some things to think about. How might you recognize that a school could benefit from the inclusive scheduling process? What are some ways you might approach sharing inclusive scheduling information with the school? After connecting a school with Finn and the school goes through, how can the inclusive scheduling process lead to schools' need for fiddlers and Finn services and supports? We hope that you are leaving today with an understanding and increased comfort level of an inclusive scheduling process. Remember that there is more than one way to do this, and you will work with teams who will have different ways of scheduling or may want to adopt these processes or tools. Giving teams a chance to work and make decisions collaboratively using a student approach to scheduling is the most important element to scheduling effective supports in inclusive classrooms. Although there is no step-by-step process that works for every school, you can use this blueprint to get started. Please contact Dr. Poinsettia Tillman at the email listed above to schedule an appointment for additional support. We thank you for all that you do to support all students.